Hi friends, today's video is a book haul, and it is definitely a collective book haul because I've been accumulating these books since around the fall of last year. As some of you will know, I had a few months last year towards the end of the year when I really wasn't reading, and I also wasn't really buying a lot of books either. Just, maybe one or two. But do that a few times and you start having a stack. And then my birthday was in November, and then Christmas in December, and I got gifted some books and got a gift card, and so I was accumulating some books. And then in mid-December I started getting back into reading, and by January was pretty fully back into it, and I was definitely buying some books. So I have a nice size stack to share with you today. So let's get right into it. The first book I have to share with you is actually one that I bought right after I made my creepy nonfiction recommendations video, and this is one of the ones that really stood out to me. I still really want to read all of the books in that video. This is just one that I ended up buying at the time, and I meant to read, but I didn't, get to it. So hopefully I will this year. But it's Quackery, A Brief History of the Worst Ways to Cure Everything by Lydia Kang and Nate Pedersen. And it's just a really beautiful looking book, but also one of those really fun nonfiction books that has a lot of images in it. I'm going to include a flip through so I can really show you how beautiful of a book this is. And yeah, so you can appreciate the aesthetic quality of it. And I'll also tell you a little bit about it. I'm going to read the back. It says, "Medical oddities and morbid curiosities. What won't we try in our quest for perfect health, beauty, and the fountain of youth? Packed with outlandish cures and outright scams, Quackery is a visually rich, humorously macabre, smart and lively journey into the dark side of medical history. Revisit a time when doctors prescribed morphine for crying infants, when snorting skull moss was a cure for a bloody nose, and when dieters took to ingesting sanitized tapeworms. From monkey glands to blood jam, Quackery shows us that when it comes to health, humans will believe literally anything." So yeah, I'm excited to try this one this year, hopefully. So that's the first book in the haul. And then the next one is actually one that I have a memory attached to it now of when I bought it, and it is Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. And I actually bought this when I was going through a tough time, and I was waiting for my flight at the Denver airport. And the Denver airport has an actual bookstore within it. It's not just a stand. And it just gave me the ability to feel like I could kind of connect with books and have a moment of feeling like I was among books and have a little break from life and stress and all that for, like 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it was. And yeah, because I went in there and I didn't know what I was looking for at all because I wasn't really reading. I couldn't really concentrate enough to read. And I decided to go with something that was written by an author who is a bit of a comfort author for me. So yeah, but this book specifically, I believe, is about an AI robot that looks like a little girl, and so she's a companion friend for, a real human child. And I think at the beginning of this, she is bought by a little girl, and it's really the story of them and this little AI girl, I suppose. So I don't know much about it, really. I know people had kind of mixed opinions about it, but I saw in an interview with Kazuo Ishiguro that to him this book was a lot about what it means to be human. It was about humanity, not so much about AI and exploring AI, which I definitely find more interesting. So we'll see how I feel about it, but at least I'll have that nice association with the book because of when I bought it. So the next three books were a gift from my sister, and the first one is Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. She knows that I enjoyed another book by this author, and so she picked this one out for me. And I don't know what it's about. In 19th century China, in a remote Hunan county, a girl named Lily at the tender age of 7 is paired with a Lao Tong, an old same, in an emotional match that will last a lifetime. The Lao Tong, Snowflower, introduces herself by sending Lily a silk fan on which she's written a poem in Nushu, a unique language that Chinese women created in order to communicate in secret, away from the influence of men. As the years pass, Lily and Snowflower send messages on the fan and compose stories on handkerchiefs, reaching out of isolation to share their hopes, dreams, and accomplishments. Together they endure the agony of foot binding and reflect upon their arranged marriages, their loneliness, and the joys and tragedies of motherhood. The two find solace in their friendship, developing a bond that keeps their spirits alive. But when a misunderstanding arises, the relationship threatens to tear apart. So that's really interesting. So this one is taking place much closer to the present than the other book I read by this author. And so yeah, I'm excited to see what this one is like. I love stories about women set in historical settings. I think it should be really interesting. And next, I have a book in Spanish. So this is El Murmullo de las Abejas, or The Murmur of Bees, by Sofia Segovia. And I had to look up what this one was about because the description is in Spanish. But so it's about how this older woman finds, I think she's an older woman, finds this orphan child covered by a blanket of bees under a bridge, I think. And he takes him back to, the village that she's from, and a landowning family adopts him. And it's about how he has these kind of special powers that eventually are very helpful to the family in the future. And it's one of those stories that is sort of focusing on different things at the same time. So you have the setting, the larger setting of Mexico during the Revolution, and then you have the zoomed in story of this family and what happens to them. So it sounds really interesting. It sounds like it's going to have some magical realism, maybe. So yeah, very cool. And then the last one is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. It turns out that my sister thought that I hadn't read this. For some reason, it said on Goodreads that I hadn't, even though I've read this twice. But I really don't mind because this edition, first of all, it's beautiful, but also it comes with other short stories, which I don't think I have. I don't think my edition of this book comes with any other short stories, so that's cool. And I really like this book, so I really don't mind having another copy of it. So The Awakening is all about a married woman's feminist and sexual awakening at the beginning of the 20th century. And yeah, it's a great kind of early feminist classic. So yeah, happy to have this one. Next, I have Notes of a Crocodile by Miaojin, translated by Huie. And I've seen other people talk about this book, and I still don't feel like I know that much about it, but it's about queer misfits in this very prestigious school in Taipei in the late 1980s. And it just sounds really interesting. People say it's kind of weird. I know it's kind of made up of vignettes and diaries, vignettes, mash notes, aphorisms. It's got satire. Yeah, so it just sounds really, really cool and out of my comfort zone, which is kind of nice to try something different sometimes. And I seem to have luck with NYRB as a publisher anyway, so yeah. And also this cover is so cool. I love it. Another one I found kind of randomly at a bookstore is this one by Virginia Woolf. It's actually a collection of essays and short stories called Street Haunting. And I really like these little cloth-bound editions. I have a little collection I'm building, and so I was excited when I saw this because I just didn't know it was out there. And so yeah, so it just has some nonfiction and some fiction. So I'm going to read the titles to give you an idea of what's in here. Let's see. How should one read a book? Women in Fiction, Craftsmanship, The Sun and the Fish, On Being Ill, Evening over Sussex, Reflections in a Motor Car, Great Men's Houses, Oxford Street Tide, Flying over London, Street Haunting, A London Adventure. Yeah, so I'm just excited to have some more nonfiction in particular to read from Virginia Woolf. So I'm excited to get to this one. Next, I have Nothing But the Night by John Williams. And I was very excited when I saw this because I really enjoyed his book Stoner a couple of years ago. And I probably would have bought it even without having read the description, but the description sounded interesting to me. John Williams' first novel is a brooding psychological noir. Arthur Maxley is a young man at the end of his emotional rope. Having dropped out of college, he's holed up in a big city hotel, living off an allowance from his family, feeling nothing but alone and doing nothing but drinking to forget it. What's brought him to this point? Something is troubling him. Something is haunting him. Something he cannot bring himself either to face or to run away from. And now his father has come to town, a hail fellows, well-met kind of guy. They've been estranged for years, and yet Arthur wants to meet. And so he does, reeling away from the encounter for a night of drinking and dancing and a final reckoning with the traumatizing past that readers will not soon forget. So yeah, I like how slim it is. I've been reading some thick books lately, and I'm excited to have some shorter options to try soon. So yeah, very intriguing kind of cover, moody. So recently I was looking for something to read next by Toni Morrison because I read Beloved last year and really enjoyed that, and I wanted to have something kind of ready to go next time I am ready to pick something else by her. And so I ended up going with Jazz because this is technically part of the Beloved trilogy. Not technically, it is part of the Beloved trilogy. And but they're not exact sequels. They're more like thematically linked, and while Beloved is exploring Black rural life after having escaped slavery in the late 1800s, Jazz is about Black urban life in the 1920s, the Jazz age. And so I'm excited to get to this one. There's also the third one in the trilogy, I think, is Paradise, and that one again moves further forward in time, I believe, but we'll see. I'll have to get to that one after I get to this one. Next, I have the first book that I started and finished in the year, and it is My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. I finally picked up another Elizabeth Strout book, and as I suspected, I ended up really loving it. This is all about Lucy Barton. And in this, she is talking about a specific moment in her life where she had an experience where she went into the hospital to have a very simple surgery done. But because of some complications with the surgery, she had to stay in the hospital for many months after that. And it was kind of mysterious understanding what happened there. But the story's not really about her illness. It's more about this time that she spends at the hospital, specifically a particular week that her estranged mother comes to visit her at the hospital, and how it prompts her to think a lot about her past, and you know, specifically kind of trying to work on her relationship with her mother. And through this, we get to learn about her life in the past, but also the future, because we're hearing from future Lucy, and so she talks a little bit about things that are to come as well. And I really, really loved it. I mean, it's got all the things I love. It's got memory, it's got a mother-daughter relationship, a struggling mother-daughter relationship. Yeah, I enjoyed this very much. And it's also part of a series. And so I was so excited after I read this that I got excited and bought a bunch more Elizabeth Strout books. So I ended up getting the follow-up to that one, which is Anything is Possible. And it's part of the Gash series, which is the setting, the city that they live in, I believe. So this is not following Lucy herself. This is following a different family. It's from the point of view of an older man. There's actually a sample of this at the end of My Name is Lucy Barton, and I was able to check it out, and I really enjoyed that sample. So I'm excited to get to this one. This is, like I said, the follow-up to that one. And then another one I got was Abide With Me. And these are the UK covers. I love these Spoiler. I love these. They're so pretty. But this, okay, so this is Abide With Me. This was her second novel that she wrote. The first one is Amy and Isabel, and it's the first one I read by her. Really enjoyed that one, so I was excited to try this one. This one's a standalone, as is Amy and Isabel. And let's see. So when 5-year-old Catherine is struck dumb with grief at her mother's death, it is down to her father, the heartbroken minister Tyler Caskey, to bring his daughter out of the silence. But Tyler is barely surviving himself. His cold church-assigned home is colder still since his wife's death, and he struggles to find the right words for his sermons, struggles to be a leader to his congregation when he himself is lost. As the small-town rumor mill goes into overdrive, Tyler's darkest hour approaches. Soon, a startling discovery will test his congregation's humanity and his own will to endure the kinds of trials that sooner or later test us all. So yeah, I love hearing about sort of test of faith kind of stories, which it sounds like this might be. But yeah, that premise just sounds very interesting. And then the last one, as you saw, is probably her most well-known novel, Olive Kitteridge. And yeah, so this is about Olive Kitteridge. Indomitable, compassionate, and often unpredictable, a retired school teacher in a small coastal town in Maine, as Olive grows older, she struggles to make sense of the changes in her life. She is a woman who sees into the hearts of those around her, their triumphs and tragedies. A penetrating, vibrant exploration of the human soul, the story of Olive Kitteridge will make you laugh, nod in recognition, wince in pain, and shed a tear or two. So it sounds like she's an older woman, and I really enjoy reading stories about older characters. So that sounds really interesting. I also believe I heard someone mention that part of the narrative in this is that you mostly learn about Olive through other characters' perspectives, I think. It's actually in third person, but I think it might be, that sounds interesting. If that's the case, I think that's really interesting. So yeah. Next, I have something a little bit out of the box for me. I have 2 poetry collections, which I don't read a lot of. But I'm excited about these. So I have Bluff by Danez Smith, and I read their first poetry collection, and I really, really loved it. I think there's another one that came out between this one and that one. I'm not sure, but I was really sucked in by this cover. I think it's so beautiful. And I believe that these all revolve kind of around the pandemic and things that were happening at the time. So I'm excited to check that out. Next time I am in the mood for some poetry. And then the next poetry collection is one that I actually already read. And this one is Obit by Victoria Chang. And these poems are really interesting. They are based around grief and death because they're all about her parents' deteriorating health and her mother's death. And so she's writing these little obituaries to different things that died for her and also for them along the way. So so one will be about language or memory, friendship, or things like that. Let's see, optimism, logic. Yeah, so it's just really interesting. It's a very interesting take on grief, and I enjoyed it a lot. I'm planning on making a video where I'm going to talk a lot more about this, so I won't talk about it too much here, but I thought this was really great. And as someone that doesn't read poetry very often, I sometimes feel like I struggle with poetry, though that's probably more to do with the fact that I just don't read that much of it. I found a lot of these pretty easy to appreciate and get into. So yeah, really great poetry collection. And more recently, I got this little essay collection, 2 essays by Susan Sontag. The first one is Notes on Camp, which is just that. They are notes, so a list of sort of defining features of camp. So it talks about what camp is, but also what it isn't, and what it is or how it is when it is done well, what it achieves in Susan Sontag's opinion. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really cool. But I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the second essay in here. which is called One Culture and the New Sensibility, which is all about this idea of a new sensibility, which is a kind of shifting cultural appreciation of art in the mid-20th century, where there's a sort of merging or blurring the line between high art and low art, which is more like entertainment and media, which I thought was really interesting. But I enjoyed this so much, I got so much out of it that it made me really excited, and I went ahead and pulled the plug on getting this chunky book, an essay collection of Susan Sontag's essays from the 60s and 70s. So we have Against Interpretation, Styles of Radical Will, On Photography, Illness as Metaphor, and some uncollected essays. And I am so excited to get to these because I had so much fun with the little book. So yeah, I'm very excited to read more from her soon. And then, okay, we're down to the last two. And if you watched my favorites of the year, I mentioned in that video how I don't know why I still don't have a physical copy of Eileen by Tessa Moshfegh. So I went ahead and got a physical copy of this book because it was one of my favorites of last year. Yeah, so this follows Eileen, who is a very unhappy young woman who is very reluctant to make any change in her life. And so this is about the events that finally really press her to have to move on and make some positive changes in her life. She works at a teen correctional facility, and a very beautiful and alluring woman starts working there, and Eileen starts to get a little bit obsessed with her maybe, and this woman also starts to get kind of obsessed with one of the inmates, and things start to get out of hand. So it's about what happens after that. But to me, the strong point about this book is really the character study of Eileen. I like to say that just because, you know, that's the thing that I really enjoyed about it. And yeah, so I'm happy to have a physical copy now. And lastly, I have a book that I actually already own. I just really wanted to have a pretty cover for this book because it was another yearly favorite of mine, and it is The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. So I have a Penguin edition of this, and I kind of really dislike how hit or miss the Penguin editions are. Sometimes they're really nice, but sometimes they're not. And the cover I have, for example, is an image that's really low resolution, so it looks very pixely. And then on the inside, the typeface they chose, it just doesn't look very nice. It's like an old typewriter kind of, you know, typeface, and the quality is just not there. So I wanted a nice edition to have on my shelf for this. So I went with this one because even though I don't think that this is the best cover for this book, I still really like the cover. The painting on here is done by John Singer Sargent, who is one of my favorite painters. This is not at all how I picture Lily Bart, the main character of this book, but I love this portrait on its own, and I think that the way that they did the design is very dramatic, so I think in that way it fits, and I can appreciate it, just, I don't know, for its sort of, the sort of mood and aesthetic that it brings to the book. So yeah, and then on the inside it's much better, the design and choice here of much more legible and easy to read, so I'm happy to have this. And this follows Lily Bart, who is a high society woman in New York in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it's the story of her struggle to stay within the society, as she also really wants to retain a very high level of independence as a woman. She doesn't want to get married, which is very interesting. And, you know, it's a lot about the folly of her choices and inclinations, but there's also something just very cool about how independent she is and how headstrong she is. So So yeah, I ended up really loving this, like I already said in that video. But yeah, anyway, I'm very happy to have a pretty copy for this. So those are all the books that I have bought lately that I have added to my collection. And I'm glad that I have read at least some of them. Not too many, but some of them. Yeah, so do let me know if you've read any of these, or if you're interested in any of these, or if you have bought any books recently, you can tell me about those. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. Bye!